Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. I knew that everything was not as it seemed when I arrived at my parents' house. We were all going to a family dinner, but something was wrong. My suspicions were confirmed when I opened the car door and heard my father and my son arguing. "Damn it, Grandpa, this is wrong." "Watch your mouth, boy. Remember whose house you're in." "I don't care whose house it is, I'm not going to participate in this." "Bradley!" Mom shouted. Brad jumped out the door and stood in front of me. He was still frowning, but his eyes widened in surprise. "Dad, I'm sorry, but I wasn't involved in this." "What?" I asked, fighting the foreboding building in my stomach. We turned around and watched together as the trio walked out onto the porch. My parents and my fiancée Karen were standing there. Each face told its own story. His father had his typical impassive stone face, and his mother had a determined one. Karen's face showed a mixture of fear and worry. "This is wrong," Brad shouted at them before shaking his head in disgust and turning to me. "Run, Dad, it's a trap," he said decisively. "Mom's there." I felt my stomach twist, and I must have let out a loud groan. The thought of running into my ex-wife even 2 years later still made me feel sick. I didn't have the anger and bitterness that I once felt towards her, but the consequences of the divorce made me try to erase her from my life. I've only spoken to her twice since I found out about her cheating. The first was the night I left, and the second was shortly after she was handed the divorce papers. I watched in silence as my son walked up to his car, got in, and drove away quickly. Surprisingly, I felt at peace. I was struggling with it, and my feelings about it were not in doubt, but other feelings said that I needed it. Their trap has been snapped, their choice has been made, and regardless of their intentions, there will now be consequences. Anyway, now I had to deal with my situation. In an abstract sense, it was like skydiving, jumping, or perhaps being thrown out of an airplane. A person can scream and cry, pray, or urinate, but he will still fall. If the parachute opens, he will probably survive the experience. It was this kind of gallows wisdom that made me calmly assess my current situation. Like what happens during many life-threatening moments in life, my life flashed before my eyes. Unfortunately, I couldn't enjoy the good times and ended up focusing on the last few years with Deirdre. We had a good 26-year marriage, not very good, but certainly not bad. We met in college, got married, found a job, had 3 children, bought cars and a house. A suburban dream. Looking back, if there were any signs of impending disaster, I never saw them. Deirdre and I would never have been mistaken for beautiful people, and we were never considered part of a popular crowd. We're pretty average. I'm kind of tall but thin. At 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighing 170 pounds, some even consider me skinny. My curly black hair and big nose indicate my Mediterranean origin. My sunglasses and pocket protector identify me as a nerd. An engineer. Deirdre looks like she stepped out of a Harry Potter fan meeting. A tall, thin, nutty librarian. She is 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighs only 130 pounds. She always had long, straight brown hair, and large-framed glasses seemed to magnify her dark brown eyes. Although she wasn't some kind of model, I always liked her long body. I thought she was beautiful, and until that day, she was the woman of my dreams. I can't say that everything was perfect at home. We argued, as a rule, about money. I was doing a good job as an engineer and Deirdre was a technician at a large local corporation, but we've had a lot of expenses over the last decade. Buying a new house, sending 3 children to college, and paying for 2 weddings sometimes left us in a difficult financial position. Other than a new house, I wouldn't change anything. I guess I expected something different when we finally became an empty nest. We were both 47 years old, healthy, had decent jobs, a home, and our lives weren't that bad. It was pretty conservative, but we got together at least once a week. Our personal life, however, was a little more problematic. I tried to keep the romantic fire going, but it was a challenge. We tried to meet once a week, but with our work and other activities, it was more like once a month. After our youngest child, Brad, left for college, Deirdre threw herself into work. She was already highly regarded in her company, but with her new intensity, she was quickly given the lead on a huge corporate project. She led a large team to rewrite educational materials for the corporation. The amount of time she spent at work soon supplanted money as the biggest obstacle in our marriage. I was proud of her, but the zeal with which she immersed herself in her project sometimes scared me. It seemed that work had become the top priority in her life. 15 months later, she completed the project, receiving high praise from senior management. She and her team did such a great job that they were nominated for several national awards, both by the National Association of Technical Writers and the professional association to which her company belonged. I went to watch her receive her award at the National Technical Writers Conference. I was very proud of her, despite the fact that the project had monopolized her time over the past year. Deirdre was beaming, basking in the rays of recognition. A month later, the annual conference of the Corporation Association took place, which turned into a real circus. It was huge compared to the previous conference, as technical literature was only one of several recognized categories. Deirdre's team was so great that her company agreed to pay for travel expenses for each employee, but not for spouses. I spent most of my vacation, and we had already spent on the previous conference, so Deirdre went to this one alone. She shared a room with another woman from her office. It didn't really matter since she had been traveling to conferences without me for years. But if I had known what was going to happen during those 4 days in Chicago, I would have found a way to be there. As they say, they are strong in hindsight. At the time, I didn't even realize that my marriage was ruined. Deirdre came back sick. She said she caught some kind of flu and got sick last night. Fortunately, this did not happen at the awards banquet, but later at the reception. She had a few drinks at the reception and she felt very sick. At least that's what I thought for 3 months, until an unexpected visit happened. Mrs. Jordan was a very well-dressed, attractive woman in her 60s. She was also the wife of Thomas Jordan, vice president of Deirdre's Department of Work. I met him several times at corporate parties. He was a handsome, trim man in his 50s with gray in his hair. He always seemed somewhat arrogant to me, but I couldn't tell if that was his personality or just a byproduct of his position. My meeting with his wife was very instructive. Obviously, Mr. Jordan has always been partial to ladies. She caught him having an affair at the beginning of their marriage, but they reconciled. She believed that after that, he remained faithful to her for 2 more years. Then the lies and suspicions started again. 6 months ago, she had had enough. Mrs. Jordan hired someone to get evidence for her impending divorce. She told me that she had evidence of his long-standing affair, but not with Deirdre. Unfortunately, she also had evidence of his night with my wife in Chicago. It looked like a one-night stand, but she wasn't sure. She dropped the investigation shortly after the trip to Chicago, as she had everything she needed for a divorce. The photos of my wife and her husband that she handed me were enough to make my heart stop beating. They showed dirty dancing in the ballroom. There were photos of them kissing, and even a few photos of Jordan with his hands under my wife's little black dress with an expression of pure lust and ecstasy written on Deirdre's face. They also sneaked into one of the hotel toilets. After a few minutes, they came out, and it was obvious that Deirdre's dress had been straightened and her makeup had been reapplied. Her face was flushed. The last set of photos showed them together as they entered his hotel room. Although none of them were too explicit, there was no doubt about what happened on the last night of the conference. Mrs. Jordan left me copies of her report and photographs. I knew right away that my marriage was over. Could I survive a one-time mistake? Doubtful, but I think it was possible. However, what trust I still had is now gone. Her betrayal, when she hid it from me in the months that followed, was as devastating to our marriage as her betrayal. The night I got home, Deirdre was working late again. I was wondering if she was really working or dating Jordan or someone else behind those protective office doors. That's the point, isn't it? Once a trust is destroyed, it's a pain in the ass to ever get it back. In most cases, it never comes back, and if it does, it's not the same as before. The poison of doubt insidiously penetrates into every area, causing every action, past and present, to be questioned. Things that used to be considered just innocent are now viewed with suspicion. By the time Deirdre got home, I was already half-packed. I left copies of the most incriminating photos on the table. When I came out of the bedroom with my suitcases, I saw that she was sitting dejectedly in the kitchen. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Billy," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. But not enough to be honest with me, right?" I chuckled. "Would you ever tell me?" "No," she whispered, and a tear rolled down her cheek. I slammed the door as I left. 4 days later, she was handed the divorce papers. In the early days, she tried to call me several times, but I was extremely rude. I told her that there was nothing she could say to change the situation and asked her never to contact me again. Was this an extreme? Of course, but I was hurt by the pain she caused, so her feelings didn't mean anything at the time. I didn't try to cut Deirdre out of my life. I needed time to take my mind off her and think during those first few weeks. I was hurt and angry, but I was still struggling to get through the divorce. All I knew was that it was a one-time thing, but even if it was, the trust we once had is gone. I didn't know if I could live with the type of marriage that would remain. Of course, all my friends and relatives had their own opinions. Some thought that I should leave the cheater, but most felt that I should try to make peace, since we had spent so many years on this. My parents were the noisiest. I thought about it for a long time, but eventually decided that I needed to move on. This was not a popular solution. The barrage of disapproval from my parents, children, and friends was overwhelming. I soon found myself constantly defending my decision when faced with a long line of people trying to persuade me to give Deirdre another chance. Constant questioning about why I couldn't forgive her was accompanied by my constant objections about why, if she loved me so much, she couldn't keep her legs together. Every discussion seemed to turn into an argument. Soon I got tired and angry that I was being treated as if it was my fault that we were getting divorced, and I told them all that my divorce with Deirdre was a dead topic. I loudly stated that I would have nothing to do with any conversation or people who couldn't respect it. Some understood my decision, many did not. Skirmishes with those who did not understand this were sometimes disgusting. When she was mentioned, I just got up and left, quietly if I was allowed, loudly and rudely if not. Unsurprisingly, publicly suggesting to supposed friends that since it's excusable and not a marriage killer, I can borrow their wives for the weekend just for an affair didn't go well, as well as telling them that I'm moving on and if it offends them, they can shove it up their ass. I have lost several friends during this time. My children reluctantly supported my decision, even though I knew they hoped their parents' marriage could somehow survive. They were shocked and angry at their mother, but they didn't leave her. However, I made it clear to them that they should not talk to me about her. While my children respected my decision towards their mother, my parents did not. My mother loved Deirdre and couldn't accept that we were getting divorced. She is more than assertive and tends to reject opinions that do not coincide with her own. My father is a different type of pushy. He served as a sergeant in the army for 20 years. He was called an asshole countless times, but it was still kind. There are much worse words that are closer to the truth. They are difficult to deal with individually, but they can be handled. When they are both in agreement, they are a force of nature. Apparently, my divorce from my cheating ex-wife was considered unnatural because they bombarded me with their advice. They constantly reminded me of my responsibilities and obligations, regardless of Deirdre's actions. Unfortunately, it took threatening to break off all relations with them if they ever raised the issue of my imminent divorce again. I knew it would get their attention, as I was the only remaining child they still had regular contact with. My older brother died in an accident 20 years ago. He was single and left no children behind. My two older sisters, Rosa and Monica, were a completely different matter. Both of them stopped communicating due to the constant interference of their parents in their marriages and families. None of them had spoken to their parents more than a few times in the last 10 years, so when I presented my ultimatum, my parents reluctantly agreed. Of course, I had one last meeting with Deirdre. A face-to-face meeting was her only requirement before she signed the divorce papers. I agreed, knowing it would hurt. That's how it was. "Bill, I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I wanted you to know that it only happened once. I know you don't have to believe me, but it's true." "You're right, Deirdre," I said coldly. "It doesn't change anything, and I really shouldn't believe you. In fact, why would I do that?" I could see that my words had hit the mark, although she kept her stoic look. Although, to give her her due, she continued undaunted. "I would like to say that I was drunk, but not so drunk that I couldn't stop." "Then why?" She took a deep breath. "I would like to answer this question easily for the sake of both of us. It's not that I'm not satisfied at home. Fine. I think that's not quite true, is it? If I'd gotten everything I needed from you, I wouldn't have fallen so easily." "So it's my fault?" I snapped. "No," she exclaimed, losing her composure for a moment. "Oh God, please don't think like that. I mean, you couldn't give me what I wanted, no one could. I needed your love and support, but I also needed to succeed on my own and get approval from others. So no, you couldn't give me everything I wanted, no one could. It was my pride that allowed me to fall. my unshakable belief that I was in control of the situation. When we received our award, I was so caught up in celebrating my recognition that I became careless. I thought that everything had turned out so that I was invincible. How does it feel to be arrogant? When Mr. Jordan started showering me with praise, I enjoyed it. I was the center of attention, and people congratulated me everywhere I turned. That and the booze made me careless. When he brought me to his room, I already knew what was going to happen. It was already late. I'll go to my grave regretting that I didn't stop him sooner. I can't say exactly why I gave up and went into his room. I know I've already crossed too many boundaries and I'm guilty of betraying you. There were my actions at the party, teasing and groping, passionate kisses and letting him grope me in the toilet. Her voice broke. She turned away and wiped her eyes. Turning to me, she pulled herself together and continued. After it happened, I was devastated. I went to his bathroom and hid until he left. I looked in the mirror and saw that an unfaithful cheater was looking at me. My guilt lay in front of me, and I couldn't hide it from my eyes in any way. I saw my world slowly sliding off the edge of a cliff. I fully realized that I was the one who pushed him, but now I was desperately trying to find a way to stop him. I know it doesn't seem like the truth, but I love you, Bill, and I need your love. It is your love and support that is the foundation on which I have built my life. When I returned home after the conference, I realized that I couldn't think of any scenario that would include confessing to you and saving our marriage. We both made it very clear throughout our marriage that cheating was a deal breaker and would end the marriage. I decided not to tell you. My arguments were selfish, but at the same time practical. Just so you don't lose anything, right? I chuckled. Her face looked like I had hit her. My pain and anger started to boil over, and I didn't even try to hide my feelings. I said that my reasoning is selfish, she said softly. I also knew that nothing good would come of confessing. I will never put myself in a situation like this again. It was the only mistake, and I will try to make sure it never happens again. I didn't resign or apply for a transfer because I rarely talked to Mr. Jordan, except for weekly meetings. Besides, if I did, you'd get suspicious and start asking questions. You're smart, and you'd probably start to suspect that something happened in Chicago that you wouldn't like. Billy, I love you, whether you believe me or not. The thought of you suffering because of my actions was more than I could bear. My guilt was overwhelming and more than enough for both of us. I made the decision to silently bear my shame for the rest of my life. I prayed that I would be given a second chance. I swore to heaven and any other deity that I would never fall like that again, and if the opportunity presented itself, I would be the best wife you could ever dream of. Obviously, it didn't work out that way. Perhaps, I said coldly, heaven remembered the vows you made on our wedding day, and perhaps they knew, as I do now, that your promises were worthless. She silently looked at me with pleading eyes. She hoped, as I did, that there was a way to put together what had been broken. Unfortunately, we both knew it was too late. After the meeting, Deirdre signed the divorce papers. They were fair and close to what the court would probably have determined. After that, I didn't talk to her anymore. A few months later, our divorce was final, and I found myself trying to move on. My children, Katie, Mary, and Brad, helped me get through the first year after the divorce. I wasn't as bad as I was during the divorce, but I was still bitter and sarcastic. I knew they were also supportive for their mother, but I never asked, and they were kind enough not to tell me anything. My relationship with my parents is a completely different matter. At best, they were strained. The ghost of my failed marriage seemed to be present every time we talked. I don't know how long it lasted, but then something changed. They met my fiancé. I started dating only a few months after the divorce. It was bad. I don't know what I expected, but most of the women I dated had as much baggage as I did. I'm sure many women couldn't wait for our dates to end, as my bitterness probably ruined their evenings. I trudged along like this for about 7 months until I met Karen. She changed my world. Karen was a lush little bundle of joy. Her dark mane framed a beautiful face and a huge, toothy smile. She was barely over 5 feet tall and carried about 30 extra pounds. She had been divorced for about 9 years when I met her. She came out of a very tough marriage. Her only child, her son, unfortunately followed in the footsteps of his abusive father and left for an unknown destination 3 years before we started dating. To say that behind her cheerful, bubbly facade was a terrified woman with huge trust issues would be a huge understatement. When I took her to meet her parents, I wasn't sure how they would react. I should never have doubted Karen's ability to be liked by others. She was just like that. They liked Deirdre, but they just adored Karen. She was accepted into the family after the second meeting with them. Karen wasn't perfect, of course, and she had big trust issues just like me, but she breathed life into my dead existence, and I fell in love with her. I fell in love with her seriously. When I asked her to marry me, she agreed with some reservations since we had only been dating seriously for about 6 months. The first condition was that our engagement would last at least a year so that we would take our time. The second condition is that we both need to get counseling so that we don't drag the baggage from our past marriages into our new one. A month later, we started family counseling. A lot of ugly little things were revealed on both sides. For the most part, we worked to overcome them. Karen struggled with one of them very much. It was the fact that I refused to talk to my ex-wife. I was very open with Karen about my marriage and divorce. By that time, I could already talk about it without getting angry or sad. I realized that Karen was worried that I might still have feelings for Deirdre. After more than 20 years of marriage, these feelings do not disappear overnight. Of course, they have changed now. The love I once felt for Deirdre was poisoned by anger and bitterness. Any remaining love was now so diluted that it never threatened my love for Karen. I didn't see any benefit in digging into the past and reliving the pain associated with my divorce. Apparently, my thoughts and feelings about this did not suit her. "Well, son," his father grumbled, "are you going to grow your courage or are you going to run away like a coward?" "Please, Bill," Karen begged. "Talk to her." I nodded sadly and sighed. I went up to the porch in silence. Mom came over to hug me, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I said coldly. I saw the pain on her face when she realized what her betrayal could cost her. I also noticed the look of horror on Karen's face as she stepped forward and shook my head. "Great," my father chuckled. "Are you going to throw a tantrum again?" "Fuck you, old man," I snapped back. "One more crappy comment from you and I'll leave. So, is there anything else you want to say, asshole?" His father's face turned bright red, and the veins in his neck bulged. I wasn't sure if he wasn't going to have a stroke right now. We've had countless conflicts, but I've never attacked him like this before. He clenched his fists, and I thought he might really take a swing at me. He was still in decent shape, but at 75 it would have been a dishonest fight. The sad truth was that it had come to the point where I would have hit my elderly father. What a sad state of affairs, I admitted to myself. Maybe it's really time to leave and start over. Surprisingly, he didn't do or say anything else. I walked past him into the house. The sight and smell immediately overwhelmed me with memories. This has been my parents' house since my brother died. The furniture, the carpet, the walls, everything is imbued with the essence of my parents. It was my second home. I felt a deep sadness when I realized that I might never enter here again. My thoughts were suddenly interrupted when I saw her sitting in the living room. She stood up, and I noticed that she had lost more weight than she should have. She looked tired, and her tired smile looked forced. Despite all this, I saw a woman I fell in love with many years ago. The pain I felt must have been written all over my face, and I saw her smile disappear. "I'm sorry, Billy," she said softly. "I told them it was a very bad idea, but they wouldn't listen." She snorted and tried to hide a slight smirk. "Your parents never listened to anyone." Now it was my turn to grin. There was a lot of truth in this statement. I felt the cold fury of their betrayal begin to build in my mind. I didn't realize it, but Deirdre's reaction told me that I couldn't hide my dark thoughts. "They really crossed the line this time, didn't they?" I nodded. "Past the point of no return?" "What is it?" she asked softly. "I do not know, but it seems so to me." "I'm really sorry. I tried to tell them, but I think they thought it was necessary if you and Karen wanted to have a future together. Billy, even though they're a pain in the ass, they really love you. For her part, so does Karen. But not enough to respect my wishes, right?" I snapped. Whether they thought my decision was childish, just stubborn, or just wrong, it was my decision, not theirs. It shows the lack of respect they have for me. At least the kids weren't a part of it, although I'm a little surprised by your role. Well, I know that both Katie and Mary told them that they would not participate. Both told all three that this was a very bad idea and begged them not to do it. Brad was immersed in a big school project and apparently didn't understand what was going on. This is not surprising since he is completely focused on his studies and is trying to graduate at the end of the semester. As for me, it's very simple. I looked at the woman who had been my world for more than 2 decades and saw her squirm uncomfortably. There was a deep sadness in her that she never had while we were married. For some reason, it didn't bring me the satisfaction I expected. "Billy," she said with a sad smile, "no matter what I say or how you react to my words, it won't worsen our relationship. I've already lost you. You already hate me, so I have nothing left to lose. When your parents asked me to do this, I turned them down at first. Although I had nothing to lose, I didn't want to hurt you anymore. Then Karen visited me and we had a long conversation. She asked me to at least talk to you. I told her exactly what I was going to tell you, and although she didn't like it, she agreed that I had to be honest. I told her she was playing with fire, and no matter what I say or how you react to it, she could still easily lose you. Unfortunately, she had to do it. She really loves you, but she's afraid that you still have strong feelings for me. This is fear, simple and clear. The kids have told me a few things about her and her past, and I'm sure most of it comes from there." We both stood looking at each other in awkward silence. Finally, I took a deep breath. "Okay, Deirdre," I said. "Tell me what you need to say. How do we do this?" "Billy, could you walk around the backyard with me?" I nodded silently, trying not to betray my feelings. We walked in silence through my parents' huge backyard, away from prying ears. She broke the silence with a whisper. "I'm sorry, Billy. You don't deserve this. And now," she sighed sadly, "now I'm going to complicate everything." She smiled faintly at my surprise. "Billy, I was a fool, in many ways. I knew I lost you when I was sleeping with Mr. Jordan, but I never tried to show you how sorry I was. I saw the futility of it, so I didn't try. But I was wrong. When we broke up, I felt so guilty that I tried to fulfill your wish, and we didn't communicate. I did it mainly so that you could have a break, so that you could try to figure out what you need to do. Unfortunately, it didn't work. I knew that many of our friends and relatives had asked you not to divorce me. I tried to talk them out of it, but I think I passed for a repentant sinner and made it worse. Oh, I was truly remorseful and would have done anything to take back my stupidity and save our marriage. But my remorse seemed to spur your parents and some of our friends. I'm sorry they made you feel like you should put up a wall and never talk to me again. That's where I was wrong." I stared at her in silence for a few seconds. My embarrassment was obvious, and she smiled sadly. "Even though I tried to give you space, there was one thing I couldn't do that would help us both heal afterwards. Whether it was hopeless or not, I had to do something, anything, to show you how much you mean to me." I started to say something, but she interrupted. "I know it wouldn't stop the divorce, but maybe it would help us to live better after it. I should have made it so that you could see that I was really sorry, and I would have had some peace of mind knowing that at least I was trying to show you that. I can't tell you how sorry I was that I didn't do it. How many times have I started calling you and making an appointment where I could at least try to talk to you? But you cut off all contact with me. I've been floundering for months trying to find a way to approach you, but then you met Karen. The children told me a little about her and how she affects you. I can't say that I wasn't jealous, but then I realized that you were gone. I also tried to move on. I haven't been as successful as you. Part of my problem was that I needed to finish with you. I needed to tell you something, but I didn't know how. Then the opportunity came along and I was given a second chance to at least fix this mistake, even if I couldn't change any of the others. So, Billy," she gently took my hand. Looking at me, tears filled her eyes as she began to release the pain and disappointment that had been buried for so long. "My husband," she said softly, "and you will always be my husband to me. I'm so sorry. I can't imagine the disappointment and pain I've caused you. I am ashamed of my actions and for the fact that they destroyed the most precious thing in my life, our marriage. And yes, it was the most precious thing, but I took my eyes off her guard. Instead of protecting him, I was looking only at myself. At the same time, I let him get poisoned. One night, I destroyed our family. I ruined our future. Because of me, our children had to divide their time between their mother and father, instead of just enjoying us as a family. I struggled to make sense of what I had heard. If I thought my mind was in chaos, it was nothing compared to my heart. What do you want, Deirdre? What are you hoping for? What I want is a chance to come back into your life. I hope this little trick they did will make you doubt that you want to spend the rest of your life with Karen. Do you think I'm going to leave Karen and take you back?" She smiled. "I'm not going to lie, but I know it's not going to happen. I know you, and I know that this little trick has damaged your relationship with Karen more than she imagines. I hope that after this, your relationship with her will not be exceptional. I pray that you will start dating other women again and let me become one of them. Billy, I'm sorry for this ambush, but not for myself, because I can finally bare my soul, but for you. Whatever you decide to do, please make sure you're doing it for yourself and not for anyone else. I know you have a lot to think about, so I'll leave you alone. I love you, Billy. Whatever you decide, it will stay forever. She gently touched my arm as she passed by. I looked into her eyes and saw in them a tired sadness mixed with relief. I felt the same fatigue, but not relief. I sat down on a bench in the courtyard, stunned by Deirdre's confession and offer. In the end, I asked myself if there could be any relationship with my ex-wife at all, even if I wanted one. I heard the patio door open and felt Karen approach me cautiously. Her timid voice made me focus again on my fiancée, the woman who claimed to love me. Bill? I didn't look up. I tried my best to separate my thoughts from my emotions, afraid that they would flare up. Bill, are we okay? No, I replied quietly, and what you're asking says a lot about our relationship. I know, she said, holding back her sobs. I'm really sorry. The problem is you don't regret doing this to me enough. Even now you'd do it to me again, right? I'm sorry, Bill, she said softly and sobbed. But I needed to know so much. To know that... I know, I interrupted her, that I loved you more than my ex-wife, and I've told you that more than once. I think actions speak louder than words, right? We were both silent for a few moments, trying to say what was necessary. Finally, I took a deep breath and looked at her. I'm sorry, Karen, I tried, I said quietly. I tried to give you every reason to trust me, but you couldn't. I think the fear and doubts from your past are so strong that you are unable to trust. No! Stop it! She screamed. It's not true! Today you showed me that I can trust you. You did something very hard and painful, and you did it for us. No, I sighed. I did it for you. All those earlier things like counseling a married couple, the ones I did for us. But today was all about you. So now you're telling me that I passed some kind of test, that's all good. But I have to ask, at what cost? I'm sorry, Bill. I needed to know for sure. That's the problem. You needed it, but what about my needs? Karen, you're not the only one with trust issues. You say you can trust me now, but now it's obvious that I can't trust you. If I passed my test, then you failed yours. Today, your fears and insecurities have surpassed your imaginary love for me. And what happens next week if something makes you doubt me or even us? What hoops will I have to jump through to regain your trust? Karen, I said softly, I can't live like this. I'm not strong enough to carry this load alone even for a while. Maybe I can do it in the future, but not now. Bill, please, I'm so sorry, she said in a trembling voice. I'm sorry? Of course I forgive you, I said calmly. But you knew I'd forgive you, didn't you? You probably even counted on it to justify your actions. She nodded slightly and lowered her head in embarrassment. But it's different now, isn't it? She whispered. I nodded. So what's left for us? I sat in silence. I was tired, very tired. I was exhausted. I didn't want to be angry anymore. I didn't want to be betrayed either. I don't know. I know the engagement is off, but whether we're still going to date depends on you. Bill, it's not fair. I know I hurt you. No, I don't think you know, I snapped. Maybe if I get in touch with your ex-husband and son and arrange an unexpected weekend for the three of you. Of course, I won't tell you about it until you arrive. Then you could overcome any problems you still have with them. I looked into her eyes and saw how understanding was emerging in them. Her tears soon followed. Naturally, then I'll tell you that it was for your own good, and then I'll remind you how proud I am of you for meeting your demons. Maybe then you'll understand how much it hurts me. Her tears were flowing freely now. I was surprised that I had no desire to rush to her aid. I must have been in a daze. I'm so sorry, she sobbed softly. Me too, I sighed. Now I have to start all over again. Do you still love me? What is it? She asked weakly. Yes, I think so. To be honest, I don't know what to think right now. I know I still care about you, but everything has changed, and I do not know how. You know I love you, don't you? I probably shouldn't ask this question now, but yes. Yes, I believe that you love me as much as you can right now. As much as I can? What is it? She asked softly. I nodded. But that's not enough, is it? I'd be lying if I said that's the case. Maybe someday our love will become stronger. if that's what we both want. But in the meantime, are we going back to just dating? I sighed. I think it's better this way. So you're going to date her too? I don't know, maybe. I've never even thought about it before, and certainly not during the conversation. I think as things stand, I'll have to decide what to do with her. Listen, Karen, I'm very tired. I need to go home and pack some things. Fortunately, I still have an apartment, so I'll stay there until we figure it out. I'll call you in a few days and we'll decide what to do next. I stood up and hugged her. I could feel the moisture of her tears on my chest. I kissed the top of her head, pulled back, and kissed her gently on the lips. Goodbye, Karen, I said, and returned to my parents' house. I knew I had to tell them something. Deirdre called it closure. My mind was racing, but I could hear the soft sobs of my ex-fiancé behind me. I found both parents in the kitchen. Their looks told me what to expect. The mother looked worried but determined, while the father seemed to be barely restraining his anger. This meant that my mother would try to justify their actions, while my father would tell me to just forget about it. It was a routine they used for most of my life. Unfortunately, it was about to end. Well, Mom began, it wasn't so bad now, was it? I think it depends on the point of view, I replied calmly. From my point of view, it was very painful. Sometimes doing the right thing hurts, my father grumbled. You know that. Yes, I sighed. That's why it's so difficult. Not only was it very difficult for me to talk to Deirdre, it was even more painful to get stabbed in the back by those I used to trust. It won't happen again. Oh no, honey, it wasn't like that at all, Mom began. Of course it was, I intervened. I said no, but you had to do it anyway. Regardless of my wishes or whether it was my decision, you decided that what you thought was best should be shoved down my throat, but as I said, it won't happen again. I thought you two learned something when you chased Rosa and Monica away, but it doesn't seem like you did. You either can't or won't stop. So as with my sisters, this is goodbye. I am very sorry that none of your children will be with you in old age, but this is the price you have to pay for bullying and constant attempts to manipulate them. Don't you dare threaten us, boy, my father barked. That's not a threat, I snapped. I'll just get it over with. If it makes you feel better, I'll send you a postcard from time to time. Until then, do not try to call or contact me, I will not answer. With that, I turned around and left my parents' house, as I suspected, for the last time. Behind me, I could hear my mother's pleas and cries, drowned out by my father's cursing and screams. This circus of interference is finally over. I would like to say that everything calmed down later, but that would not be true. I cut off all contact with my parents, even canceled my home phone and got another cell number. Of course, that didn't stop them from trying to corner me at home or at work. It didn't help that the few times I met Karen again, my relationship with my parents became the main topic of discussion each time. That wasn't the only reason we stopped dating. It became painfully clear to both of us that everything we had was slowly dying. After all, she wasn't emotionally healthy enough to help me overcome my distrust of her. It wasn't malicious, but it was what it was. Our final breakup was mutually expected. After that, I decided I needed to take a clean break. I tried to get a transfer, but my company wasn't some kind of global corporation, so there were only a few options and they weren't available. I applied for and accepted a similar position, with a much lower salary, a couple of states away. I met Deirdre once before I left. I met her and Brad for lunch and informed them of my impending departure. They were not pleased with the news, but they were not surprised either. My parents bombarded our children. Our daughters were far enough away, so they avoided the mess by simply blocking certain phone numbers. Brad wasn't so lucky. When we met, he told me that he was upset that he was being forced to make such decisions. I understood, but my heart went out to him anyway. I didn't want to put my son in this position, but I'm not sure that circumstances would have allowed otherwise. In the end, he also cut off contact with them. Before I left, Deirdre asked if I had thought about her proposal, and I replied that I had. I asked if I could visit her when I got back to town. She smiled and said she really hoped so. I got out of the city without much fanfare and found that I was starting to get used to my surroundings. It's been a few months now, and I've been enjoying my new job, even though money was tight. I even went on a few dates, although they didn't promise to be more than one night. There were 2 women I met several times. Celia was an attractive woman. I met her at work. She was a few years older than me, but in great shape because she was really into yoga. Lori was a pretty little divorced blonde in her early 40s. She was very fat, but she had very beautiful blue eyes and a beautiful face. I was sitting with a glass of wine, pondering my current status, when I heard a knock on the door of my apartment. When I answered, I realized that everything would change again. "Hi," she said softly. "I was wondering if I could bother you a little. I'm thinking of renting one of the apartments in this complex, but first I'd like to talk to some of the current tenants. Do you mind if I come in?" She had no body or appearance that could stop the movement, but she made my heart stop. She was a tall, thin brunette with shoulder-length hair and gold matte tips. Large glasses with gold wire frames made her eyes look even bigger. They also reinforced the ever-changing looks of hope and determination, doubt and fear that danced in her eyes. "Deirdre," I said softly, "what are you doing here?" Well, after my big speech about my actions, I thought it would be hypocritical of me not to try to show you that I still think very seriously about you. And you kind of asked me out on a date before you left. "Deirdre, I asked if I could visit you when I get back to town." "Yes, but you've been coming back too long," she said with a shy smile. "Billy," she said, her voice hoarse with excitement, "I'm trying to find a balance. On the one hand, I want to give you the opportunity to start over, but on the other, I need to make sure that you know how much I want to show you that we can still have some kind of future. I understand that I'm not very good at balancing, and I'm probably already on the verge of persecution mania, but I need you to know, if you want, I'll start over too. I know our marriage is dead, but I believe we still have feelings for each other. I'd like to see where we could go if we started dating again. Deirdre is moving into my apartment complex." Well, that was a line. "Oh, I'd be very happy to rent an apartment here, but I thought it might bother you. Actually, I'm staying at a local motel right now. I was interviewed for a position in the area this morning. The position is solid, even if it is a level lower than I am now, but it looks like I will be able to regain this level within a year or two. They offered me a job, but I asked them to give me a couple of days because I need to talk to you first. Deirdre, when we divorced, I stopped influencing your decisions. In fact, I had lost influence even before that." Her face wrinkled slightly and she looked away. She turned around and looked me straight in the eye. "You're right, of course, but I'm trying to change that. If you don't want me here, I'll leave and I won't bother you anymore." "Look, Billy, I'm trying to start over. I started by changing my appearance a little and planning to move. No matter what you decide, I needed to get away from the past and start over. I have 3 more interviews in other cities scheduled for the end of this month. There is a very good chance that I will take one of those positions, but I really would like to start here, since the 2 people I want to have in my life will be here in this area." I was about to reply, but then her words startled me. "2?" She smiled softly. "Well, besides you, Brad also wants to move here after graduation. I expect him to call in a week or 2 to make sure you're okay. I think your parents drive him crazy even in college, and he wants to start over too." "Damn it," I said, shaking my head. "Won't they ever learn? I wish I could find a way to stop them, but they just won't stop." "I feel sorry for Brad too," she said softly. "He shouldn't have to go through this either. As for your parents, I think Karen still talks to them every day." "Well," I grinned, "maybe they'll adopt her." "This is a very scary thought," Deirdre laughed. I felt my heart jump at the sound of her laughter. It reminded me of much better days when anger and pain weren't so intense. "Billy, I'm not looking for any guarantees or promises. Well, that's not really true. It would be more accurate to say that I don't expect any promises or guarantees. What I'm looking for is a chance to start over. I really want to do this with you as part of it, even if it's a small part." "Well," she said, taking a deep breath, "what do you think about it?" My mind was racing. I was both thrilled and flattered that she wanted to move closer to me. To some extent, I felt that I was being manipulated into making a decision. On the other hand, I felt like I was given another chance. I wasn't trying to get Deirdre out of my life. It was more in response to the situation and all the pressure I was feeling at the time. Then I needed to completely separate from her, and it turned into something adamant. Now that pressure has disappeared. No one but me pulled the strings. I still felt the pain and betrayal, but they weren't as overwhelming as they were then. I also knew that I still loved her, but my trust was deeply damaged. Is it possible to restore it? Maybe, but it will take time and it will never be what it was before. And yet, will it be better or worse than what it is? I looked at Deirdre and stepped back, allowing her to enter my apartment. I think you will enjoy living in these apartments. Maintenance is easy to work with and it's pretty quiet. My solution was simple. The only way to find out is to try both possibilities. I can continue to date other women, but also Deirdre. How long this will last is anyone's guess. I think I'll probably end up dating only Deirdre someday. She definitely has an inner path to my heart. She knows me better than any of the women I could date, but she is also dealing with the ghost of our past marriage, and it will never completely disappear. Will I ever get married again? I doubt it. Being exclusive with Deirdre or Celia or Lori or even someone else, it sounds good to me. Marriage? Very doubtful. With my broken marriage and failed engagement in the past, I doubt I'll ever want to get married again, but who knows?